Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Abagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. So now it's to rewind back to the beginning of our conversation.
I know,
Right?
I know. I was trying to get there before we got on. I don't think I got all the way back. Well, I think we started with saying that we'd already covered the need to have we'd already covered the need to have a catalyst to bring about change in our lives,
Mhm.
and that it was still showing up, but we had a different perspective on it. I think that's where it started
Right.
from.
Well, it started being, I think it started from, oh God, it started a whole slew of epiphanies
It
in our,
really did. I mean, so much just started unfolding and unwinding, and
um, I think it started with, well, so we've talked about, let's just back up and talk about that for a second. So,
okay.
like there's this realization in duality and separation that we have all these catalysts that we have chosen
Hmm.
in the creation of our reality to say, direct us, propel us into a certain direction because we want to do, experience
Right.
certain things, blah, blah, blah. So the realization,
Or we believe we want to experience certain things, and then we get there and go, "Oh, this isn't at all what I thought it would be."
right, right. It's like I said, I always tell people it's like reading a book about riding a bike and then actually getting on a bike
And
and
then
riding
riding,
it.
right, right, yeah,
Good morning, Gloria. And so the then we realized in the conversation, wow, it's like I have 2 pages written of notes and it still doesn't like go back to the beginning of our conversation. But it was like this idea of, so let's look at catalysts, right? Because the reality is, if we sit and set ourselves here in this particular density, this particular set of dimensions and stuff, uh,
right,
everything we do is a catalyst.
right.
Everything is a catalyst in some way, shape, or form. And
Well,
then,
and if you rephrase that and say everything we create is a catalyst,
mhm,
so our creations are nothing but catalysts.
right. And then we were like, well, look at science, right? Look at physics, look at, you know, inertia and and movement and how things are propelled. And it was just
Right,
like, and then it was like, oh my God, we just structured the entire set of dimensions this way, right?
right, right.
Um, if not even wider than that, like some basic forms, but we don't know that. Well, we do know that, but it's different everywhere. But we have this set of dimensions that we have these rules that we created, right? That everything is a catalyst, right? And it's sort of
Right.
like if you ever looked under a microscope at atoms and molecules, you see stuff bump it, like bump
Right.
together, they
There's
move,
always movement.
right? And so what we got to discussing was, well, when we look at it that way, right, and everything is a
Right.
catalyst, then maybe it's a matter of how do we manage it as a catalyst, or how do we
Navigate.
navigate? That's
We
the
came
word.
back to that
Yes.
awesome word navigate versus, and then we came up with the nice, it's either bumper cars or it's what did we call
The
it?
relay race. The relay.
The relay race. That's
Yes.
it. Yeah. So
Yep.
bumper cars is when you're just bouncing off everything, and everything is that surprise almost, versus
Yep.
a relay race, where it's planned and in sync,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And
And I mean,
aligned.
of course, it is all planned, but then it's like,
Exactly.
it's how we play it out, right? So it's how we play. That's what we started looking at, is how we play it out. And part of this came from my frustration with inertia.
Right, right. Exactly.
With someone else
Exactly.
in inertia in my reality. And I
Right.
was so frustrated and irritated, and I would judge that person. And this is like, these are the people in our immediate realities, right? And then it's like, well, why am I judging that? Right? Because I'm like, oh, it's do, 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 but do, do, do is all 3D and separation and whatever. And it's like, oh, well, look at this. And then like, what if we shifted even the way we did movement and doing, right? To
Right.
from that, that's when we were talking about the bumper cars, right? Because it's like you see it like bumper cars, like you see things like chaos theory, right? Things just sort of randomly hit each other and push. And to me, that's almost a more violent way of doing things, right? Because
Right.
it's having to hit to
Right.
bounce.
Right. And the belief that you need that, like a wake up call,
Hmm.
versus I've got this plan. I know exactly. I know the direction I want to go, and I trust that what happens between here and there is exactly what needs to happen to get me to where I want to go.
And that's when it becomes the relay versus the bumper cars, because
Exactly.
then it's like in a relay, right? So if anybody's ever watched, a relay and track, it's like you have
Right.
one person runs and they hand off the baton to the next person, but they don't ram into each other to do
Right.
it.
Right. And the other person gets up to speed, and right at the precise moment they hand off, and it's seamless. It's
Yes.
flawless.
Yes. And so when we see things from a more expanded perspective, and we, like you're saying, trust that I see the end point, and I know I've set it up in this beautiful, perfect, synchronistic, symphonic way,
Right.
right? Then you can allow it to be the relay. So then you're just increasing momentum as you go, right?
Right.
So when we look at um oh, the physics of it and all that kind of stuff, when you increase the momentum, right, then you have a higher probability of getting to that end point.
Right.
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 Versus if it is this random, I'm going to just be floating here unless I get
Until
bumped.
something rams me.
Until something bangs me. It's just like a
Well,
different way of exploring that.
right. And we talked about, inertia is that, body at rest stays at rest unless it's acted upon by an external force, just like a body in motion stays in motion unless it's acted on by a force. And it's like, so why would we want to just be a victim to the force?
Right. We are the force. That's the thing,
We're
right?
all of it.
Right. We're all of it. And so, and the reason we started and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe we're sitting here quoting science.
Right. Well, and then you add in the judgment of those bodies at rest or
Right.
those bodies in motion.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
mean, it gets kind of wonky in there.
Yes, it does. Well, and it was funny because it came out, I was like, God, it's like science. And then we were laughing because we're like, oh my God, I never thought we'd end up talking science and, these conversations. But it is an example of how we've structured everything,
Right.
right, in the set of dimensions that we are embodying ourselves in right now, right? So, and good morning, Nicole. So, um, so the thing about, what is there to do that? So when we have that expanded perspective and we have that trust and we know that we are the whole thing in creation, right?
Right.
Um, we can really create that momentum of creation too. Like we can utilize what we've created to
Right.
support our new creations, right?
Right. And the management of the catalysts, if you want to even still refer to them as catalysts, it takes on a whole new, I don't know, catalyst to me is always something that's, you know, I don't want to say violent, but requires some disruption, I guess.
Friction, friction.
The friction, that's a good term for it.
Mhm.
And I see that once you step into that place of navigating, then you use it to your advantage versus become a victim to it.
Mhm. And so we talk about, and that's the thing. So what we started talking about is this: how can I judge inertia when we're being guided to be?
Right.
Because that is the ultimate of everything and nothing, right? And it's not the judgment of the inertia, it is the seeing that when we don't when we stay buried in the separation and density, without expanding into, expanded consciousness, then we use inertia to just wait for the friction of the bumper cars, right?
Right. Right. Right.
And then what happens, again, not to quote science so much today, that's so crazy, but sadly my college physics is going back, but when you don't have something that is supporting that movement, when you are in a space of energy and flow, right? And you
Right.
are in a place of
Right.
forced inertia,
Right.
you're putting so much friction to staying still that then you need this huge catalyst to kick you in the ass to
Right.
move.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's really and then we were looking at that from a bigger picture. So then what's our impatience with that, right? Because then it came out to this larger picture with many of us who do spiritual work at the collective level and everything else. I mean, there's judgment that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is
Right.
us as well as everything else, right? Is I'm not doing enough, I'm not doing the right things. But then it's also like, why isn't everyone else jumping on the bandwagon? Why isn't everyone else
Right. Right.
being in that proactive relay kind of momentum, right? Because it all feeds, the more of us as individual cells, right? The fractals of the whole start to move, the more powerful and easier it gets for us to shift, right?
Right.
To do
Right.
the shift that we're shifting, right? And
Well,
it's
and
us.
so many, right. And so many people, come to us and they say, I can't control my life. I feel like everything's out of control and I'm just a victim to this. And it's that whole perspective of being in control versus allowing the control or allowing the flow, because it takes so much more energy to resist the the catalyst, if you will,
Mhm.
and it's exhausting, and it's not our natural state.
Right. But we've forgotten that, right?
Exactly,
So it's like
exactly. And so, go ahead.
standing in a stream, right? Or standing in a river, right? If you're standing in a river and you go with the current, right? You have a
Right,
much easier time swimming or floating than if you're trying to fight it, right? To cross it or go against it,
right,
right?
upstream, right,
Um, but but then think about that not only in a stream or a river, but think about that in the ocean. Think about that in a waterfall, right?
oh yeah, yeah,
And so
right,
that's what we create when we all shift in the same direction, which is what we're doing. Honestly, it's just a matter of, there are some who then get into the control mode of inertia, right?
right,
I'm stuck. That's inertia right there,
right,
but it's forced inertia, right? So
yep.
it's like, I'm stuck, or I'm like, AKA, I'm refusing to go anyplace from
Right,
here.
I'm refusing to budge.
So I'm standing in the middle of this current of
Right,
my life, of my journey, that's saying it's time to move here. But I'm going, no, 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 no. I am standing right here in the middle of the current and I am going to fight it every step of the way.
right,
And then I'm going to claim victimhood to it.
right, right, right,
So it's not bad. It's not, I'm like, we're not judging it, but this is what we're doing. And this is what we started looking at, right? Because we were like,
right,
why are we feeling so impatient and irritated about these things, right? So I feel like I
right.
have some notes. So then we had these beliefs. Now I'm going back to my notes because I know we had so much we were talking about, where the irritation is our belief, because I know that many that we know who are really active in this too, right?
Hmm.
The irritation that we get is our belief that the inaction of others delays us in the completion of our journey.
Right, right,
It's all perfect, right?
exactly.
It's for us to trust that it's all perfect, even when we're judging others in action
Right.
on the
And
road.
it's all inevitable, and it all perfectly will come into alignment, even given the fact that there is no time.
Yes. Well, outside of this construct, right? Yeah.
Right.
It all happens. It's all done. It's all complete.
All
Um,
perfectly.
and so really it's another level of trust. It's always coming back to that trusting thing, right?
Right.
And so that's where there's a lot of frustration though for many right now. They either feel like, and so think about that when we say, oh, forced inertia, right? So I'm doing forced inertia, which means I am controlling this little piece of me. And I'm think about that. If you think about the energy of standing in the middle of a river and forcing yourself to not move, how much energy and
Right.
strength that would take, right? So,
And a level of exhaustion.
so kudos to what we've developed and the power
Right.
and like that, look at the power we create and all of that and all of the inertia that we create for ourselves through that control,
Right.
through that belief of the need to control. And then when we let go, think of like how much even more powerful we become, because then we can just use that power to create as we flow.
Right. And it's almost like when you're resisting, you're on your own. And when
Mhm.
you're in the flow, you have such support
In
and
all directions.
such,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's not, you connect to all the pieces and parts of you instead of just what you believe is you in that moment.
Yeah.
That's crazy to think about, that difference.
Well, and I think about, as a scuba diver, right? When you first learn how to scuba dive, what's the one thing, one of the first things you learn is how to work with the currents, how to flow with the
Go
currents
with the flow.
versus
Right.
tiring yourself out by fighting them, right?
Right.
And it was funny because you get tense, you're nervous, and when you first start. And
Right.
then I remember I started watching the fish and it's like, well, the fish, like they fly in the water because they
Right.
use the current of the water to optimize their energy to get where they're going, right? And it's like, oh, well, that's when I started getting better at scuba diving because I was like, well, I'm going to be a fish. I'm just going to flow.
Right. Right.
That's part of all of this too. That's the importance of the letting go, because I can't tell you how many times I've worked with people, including myself, right? The experiences I've had myself, but how many times I've worked with other people who have fought something and fought something and fought something
Right.
and said, no, well, I can do this, but I can't do that. So I'm going to hold on, you know, with the death grip and
Right.
until their hands were pried off of it and it just sort of exploded on them. Right. And they're
Right.
forced to let go.
Well, and it was almost as if it was taken away from them.
Yes. Well,
It
because
no longer became their choice to keep it
right. Because
or
their
stay.
expanded self said, yeah, this is just, yeah, mm-mm.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to make this Niagara Falls now. Sorry.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
But then when they do let go, yes, there's the initial like shock of the change, but like every single time afterward, they're just like, oh my God, actually, I don't know why I held on to that for so long.
Right. Right.
Every time.
And and a lot of times that's why they say hindsight's 2020, because looking back it's like, oh, if I'd only known this,
Right.
I
Right.
could have been, I could have done this. I could have done this. I could have done this.
But, and every time we say, I can't do this, or, I have to do this, right?
Right.
Every time we say that, we are putting more resistance to the flow of what we're creating, right? And so
It's
this is big
I,
right now.
I love all the Carl Jung quotes. What you resist persists.
Yeah,
That's this.
totally.
Yep.
Totally. And it's a big topic right now because we have a lot of explosions going on, little and big, right? And the
Right.
individual worlds of everyone to larger ones, to look at like communities, to politics, to blah de blah, like, the earth,
Right.
global warming, the.
I mean, everywhere you look, you can find examples of this.
Yes. And so if we just can start to let go and allow that flow, right? Because it's not forcing the flow is already there, right? The flow of
Right.
the flow of the whole, the flow of the divine consciousness or the multiverse or whatever you want to call it.
Right. That's
We're the
there.
we're the creators of that, and we know it's all complete.
Right.
And in that completion is that flow of creation. And yeah, part of what we just, part of what we created was the ego and separation, the exclusion, the exploration of identity. The what happens if we resist the flow, right? The shadow and the darkness and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And when we start looking at it that way, it's like, okay, well, and we've had fun with it. And then, at some point when you're swimming, you get tired and just say, you know what? Either I'm going to drown or I'm just going to go with it.
I'm going to flip over on my back and go with the flow.
That's right. That's right. So, that's something that's really important to look at right now, I think, in all of our realities is where we're still holding on to things that are
Right.
not in flow. And how you can tell that, I think, is it's getting harder to hold on to it.
Right. Right. And almost based on a need, a perceived need. I need this. Oh, sounds like something to let go of then.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. Nicole says one
So,
can always do something. A person gets to choose what matters to them and choose a loving thought to create from whatever matters to the individual. Yeah. Yep. But the thing is, and it's funny because this is the funny part. When we talk about being versus doing, right?
right.
And we've been talking about doing from being versus doing to be, right?
Right. Right. Right.
The real true inertia is truly just flow and allowance,
Right.
which actually allows change and shifting faster than any effort ever will.
Absolutely. Right.
Because when you finally let go to the current, then you get where you're going pretty fast.
Exactly.
Yeah. And really, our resistance is no, we love this. We love this so much.
Right.
We love the pain and suffering and the challenge,
Misery. Yes.
the epic journey of suffering and challenge and overcoming and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And
Right.
because we
Right.
have great stories that we've created from that. We love the story.
Right. And people want to hear the stories.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And so now it's like, what if we just did this? Like, so what's the story when we go, so I floated down the river?
Well, that's no good. That's boring.
Wait, wasn't that something? Wasn't that a book? I don't know. Some book about going down the river. But yeah, so we've loved all the nicks and the colors and the resistance we've created. And to get to where we are going, think about that. To go where we are going, to shift to what's next, is that if we want to use the analogy of going to where we're going, well, what better thing to do than to allow yourself to float on the current
Right.
of creation
Right.
and that trust, which is a beautiful thing and so powerful. And like you said, think about the support you get when you do allow it.
Right. I mean, support that you can't even imagine because you have access to everything at that point
Yeah. Yeah.
because you allow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you can look at, rather than sit and judging the doing, is doing from that place of being, which is doing from that place of allow and trust and flow. And that's such a different, it's almost like non-egoic doing.
It's like floating down the river and you see a leaf and the leaf's floating along with you. So you can go grab that leaf because it's there floating along with you versus
Right.
I'm going to float, I'm going to swim way back upriver to get that leaf
Right. Right.
because I missed it. Might float down next to you. Yeah. And part of the judgment that there are growing collectives. I think the growing collective of consciousness is, that, stop fighting. But then, there's all of these little embedded control things, right? Control issues. And, but you got to go this way. You got to go down the river this way. You got to follow the flow this way. But it's not.
Right.
It's allowing the flow, opening all the stops and trusting, because we're afraid of that too. We're afraid of that power
Right. Right.
just as much as we desire it. So instead of recognizing that we are that power, and there's nothing that could not be that, like there's nothing in us that could not be that. So when we just open up all the faucets and let it flow, it's a lot easier.
Right.
Um,
And if we truly understood, we'd be more afraid of not allowing the flow.
which then creates a non-flow.
Right. Right.
Fear. Yeah. So, we were talking about, after 2 pages of notes here, there's some stuff I've skipped over because it's almost like we have other topics for other days that came out of that conversation. At the last sentence, it says, trust in the end game. Trust
Right.
in.
Right.
And so, we still have our individual journeys, but what beauty it can create. Think of the art that would be created if you took all of these different streams of color and let them flow forward in a river, right, together to
Right.
the waterfall. Like, think about what that would create.
Well, and that the doing would be orchestrating that flow versus, oh no, everybody stop, and and stopping the flow and then orchestrating from there.
Or
That's
just allowing everything to come together and do its part
right.
as it's been created, as we've all created ourselves, and the embodiments we are, and the pieces and parts and all that kind of stuff. So much easier.
Right.
And then we could play so much more, right? Because
Right.
then, and going back to the scuba diving thing, when you start to do that in scuba diving, you can serve so much more air in your tank when you're not fighting the flow of the current, when you're not, like trying to swim against it. And instead you start being a fish and allowing it to carry you, then your body isn't working as hard, right? So we're looking at this, how we're working at it. And then what happens is you use up when you're fighting it, you use up more oxygen. So then you have to go to the surface faster. But if you're not fighting it and you're flowing with it, then you conserve more oxygen and it takes you longer to use up your tank of air. So that's the same kind of thing. It's like, if we actually flow with the creation of this completion of the symphony, right?
Right. Right.
Then we actually have more space to play in it as we're flowing through it.
Right.
Because we have more energy that we can use elsewhere.
Right. It reminds me of that phrase, when you're working to achieve something and you say, well, I'm trying, and it's like, well, stop trying and just do it. It's like we're trying. We're stuck in trying mode.
Yes. And now we're just
The habit is we're in trying mode.
Yeah. Oh yeah, when you know what, that just gave me a big epiphany right there too.
Perfect.
It's been a pattern of interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of things we leave left undone that we feel like is undone or whatever,
Right.
or I can't, or like, and whenever we use that, that's the control. That's the control factor. No, I can't. Not allowing. Really is, I'm not allowing that when you say
Right. Right. Or I'm not choosing that.
Yes. Yep. And same thing, which I have to means I'm choosing only this and not allowing all of these other pieces in the current, just this. I'm going to hold on to that little pebble in the center of the river.
Right.
So that's for us to look at, I think that's really the key for this week. And it's really big because, like I said, we're in such a shifting space right now, and things are moving at such a high current of shift.
Absolutely.
That,
and what we see as chaos is things getting caught in that current and going.
yeah.
And we're stuck trying to control it, going, wait.
Yeah.
If we
you have to go here, and you have to go here, and you have to go here.
Exactly.
Right? No, you're not allowed to float over that side, or you're not allowed to do that, Yeah.
Here's the herding the cats.
Yeah. And and here's the thing, we might float right on by somebody who's got that forced inertia going, who's holding on to a rock with dear life, who's for dear life. And it's not our job to pry their fingers off of
Right.
it for them.
Right.
So
Because they'll just grab the next rock.
that's right. That's right. And in a way, it's creating part of the current too.
Right.
So until it's not, and then they can let go, or they'll be forced to let go because then that rock will just disappear anyway. So that can be for our
Right.
spouse, our children, our like our closest friends, our family, and all that kind of stuff.
Our
Um,
job.
our job, our way of life, our
Right.
house, there's everything, the income, like what we want for money or desire for money, all that kind of stuff. And so the key for us is to look at it from this different perspective of how do I open up my flow even more.
Right. And trust.
Yes. Yep. And have fun while I'm trusting and flowing with it. So much easier. Then we
Yeah.
sleep so much better. There's so much less irritation. There's so much less judgment, because when we're judging, we're trying to control the flow of everything, right?
Right.
And it's like, okay, have fun holding on to that rock.
Well, and there's so much, there's, you look at, coming back to sciences, you look at something that's something that exists, and science tries to like decode it so that they can reproduce it, and there's always something that's just not quite exactly right. So when we try to control something, we're missing things that we just can't quite get exactly right, versus if we just let it flow, it's actually very different. It's actually very different.
Well, because we see what we need to see when we need to see it, and that's support, right? And the support of that flow.
Right.
Well, if we try to control yeah, Gloria says less anguish and pain. If we
Right.
try to control every little thing,
Right.
often we miss the big picture. We lose the forest for the trees, right?
Right. And a lot of times we miss, and magic, or we miss the secret ingredient that someone brings because we just don't even see them.
Yeah. Yeah. Or allow ourselves to see. Yeah. And so it's like, well, okay. Um, it's I just totally lost my train of thought. I just totally zoned out for a minute. I just
Yeah,
went
that one just kind of sideswiped me too.
that was very odd. I just lost my thought in the middle of the sentence. But yeah, what did you just say now? About the
Control and that.
the little pieces, yeah. Well, and the funny part is, how many times have you gone through something, right, where you've just like relaxed with it, and then later on you look back and you go, "Oh my God, thank goodness!" Because if I was trying to control this, I would have
I
it would have been
never would have
100
thought of this, or I never
right,
would have done
right,
this, or I never would have allowed this.
right.
Right.
So it is truly a matter of trust, and why it's important to trust in right now more than ever, because we have collectives that are really like building up a lot of energy toward the same goal, but maybe from a different
Right.
perspective, right?
Right.
And that's what does
Which
it come
has
down?
more people hanging on the rocks.
I know. And that's, and what the judgment is I'm going to hurt myself if I hit them, hold on to the rock. But we just set ourselves to flow and know that it's going to be all taken care of, because we are taking care of it, because we're the creators as well as the participants. So, there are other things to look at within that, but it's something to really look at in your life right now, because I've heard a lot of people say, I don't know like, I don't know what to change. I know, like, I don't know what to change, and I don't know how to change this. But then when you talk to them about, well, what if you did this? Oh no, I can't do that because of this.
Right.
And then you say, well, what about this? Oh no, I can't do that because of this.
I can do anything but that.
Yeah.
Oh, but I can do anything but that.
Right. And then you list like 10 different things, and now they've like given you 10 limitations of, no,
Right.
this is how I can't do this, because what we do is we rationalize what we're comfortable with, what the
Right.
ego is comfortable with, and we say things like, "Oh well, I can't not do this because this pays my bills."
Right.
And I'm like, well, what if you had did something else that actually not only paid your bills but gave you even more, much more?
Right.
And you can't think that out, but you can allow it to happen.
Right.
And when you say that, what do you mean allow it to happen? Because yeah, you're holding back the spigot. Open the spigot.
Right.
That's where we get
Take
to
your
our
hand
abundance.
off the off button.
Well, yeah, right. Right.
Stop
Stop
pressing
pressing the.
off.
This is leading into, I think, our next program, which is going to be 28 Days of Abundance.
Right. Absolutely.
More on that to come. But this is, it's funny, I didn't even see that connection till this very second. I was like, oh, look at that. But that's what's going on in terms of this flow. It's such a big, and when we look at it, it's so what's the word? Concentric, because it's in everybody's individual realities,
Right.
and it's in bigger and bigger collectives.
It is. It is.
And it's like time for us to remember, well, we're so close to the edge of the waterfall. And the
Yeah.
waterfall's not bad. The waterfall is what helps us jump into the next reality.
Right.
So why are we holding on for dear life to fight it?
So we can stay in the swamp.
Apparently, apparently. So I think that's what our intention will be. Our creation today is, I allow and trust the flow of my greater creation,
Oh, that feels really good.
or my expanded creation. How's that?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I allow and trust the flow of my expanded creation. Oh, that feels really good.
That feels great. Hold on.
Hold on, baby. All right. So let's everybody take a deep breath and close your eyes. And what we do is we step out there back into wholeness and hold ourselves at that vibration where that is our truth. All right. Let's go do that. Well, I could have spent all day out
Oh,
there.
no kidding. I'm telling you, that was that was awesome.
Yeah.
I had so much resistance in the beginning. I could feel myself going, nope, 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 and like backpedaling. And then I went, wait a minute. I created this flow. So why would I not trust it? And it was just like, yeah. And I was like picking up your feet and just going in the middle of the stream. That was incredible to just remind myself that I created it. So why would I not trust it? Because I trust
Right.
myself.
Right.
That was incredible.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. It was funny because it was like I was sitting on a raft that was tied to all these things in the middle of this like flowing river. And it was like, oh, well, why don't I just untie all these things? Right. And then, then there's the thought of like hitting something or somebody that's like, oh, but they're me. I'm the rock as much as I'm the water and the flow
Right.
and the boat and the me. And I was like, oh, and then there was just nothing but that flow. And yeah, I had a similar experience of like, oh, wow, my God, that's so like so fast. Right.
Right.
And it was like, well, or I can like, but there's nothing to not trust because it's already done.
Right.
It's already
Yeah.
complete. Which is the same as saying, well, I created it. Why would I trust it? It's already complete. It's already done. So yeah, and then I was like, oh, this feels lovely, like just golden, delicious
Mhm.
bliss.
It was incredible.
Yeah, it was. Well, that would be a great place for us to stay this week.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us. We will see you next week on
I
Ascended
think
World.
Tuesday.
Yes, next week we're doing Tuesday instead of Monday. And we're a very special thing because Sarah and I are doing a work week together next week. So we're going to be in the same place,
Right. Same time zone.
same time zone. So we'll see you next week, but Tuesday morning at 9:30 instead of Monday.
Right.
And then we'll go back to normal after that. But in the meantime, go and flow through this and just be
Right.
aware of everything that you can let go of and allow yourself to be a part in that flow and
Right.
allowing. Yeah. So,
Awesome.
so have a good week. This is Angela Coulter
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a good one.